The rain came down in silver sheets, drenching the vast expanse of manicured lawns that framed Andriy Kornienko's estate. The mansion stood like a fortress on the hill, its sleek, modern lines cutting against the storm-black sky. Light pulsed behind tinted windows, the glow of security systems humming silently in the dark. To anyone watching, it was just another night in the life of a millionaire recluse, a man who built empires and buried his enemies. But for four men, in a stolen black SUV parked half a mile down the road, this night was about to change everything. Inside the vehicle, the air was thick with tension and the smell of cigarette smoke. Maxim, the leader, sat in the front passenger seat, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the glowing screen of a tablet that streamed the mansion's security feed. His jaw was set, his hands steady. He'd planned this job for 6 months. Every camera, every sensor, every blind spot had been studied. This was supposed to be perfect. Security's running on backup power, Maxim said, his voice low but firm. The storm took down the main grid 20 minutes ago. They'll be running diagnostics for another hour, maybe more. This is our window. From the driver's seat, Taras let out a nervous laugh. A window with bulletproof glass and enough alarms to wake the dead, he muttered, tightening his grip on the steering wheel. He was the youngest in the crew, barely 24, with too much adrenaline and not enough experience. In the back seat, Victor and Bohdan exchanged glances. Victor, the muscle, was silent as always, his broad shoulders hunched forward, his fists resting on his knees like coiled steel. Bohdan, on the other hand, was a live wire, sharp, twitchy, with a grin that never reached his eyes. He thrived on chaos, and something about his restless energy made Maxim uneasy. Once we're in, we stick to the plan, Maxim continued. Straight to the study. The safe's behind the art piece on the north wall. Combination code, then biometrics. We crack it, grab the cash, and we're ghosts. 20 minutes tops. And if he's home? Bohdan asked, a glint of excitement in his eyes. Maxim shot him a cold look. He won't be. His schedule is airtight. Dinner in the city with some minister until midnight. We'll be long gone before dessert. But deep down, Maxim knew something didn't feel right. The storm had hit harder than expected, knocking out more than just power. Andriy Kornienko was not a man who left his fortress vulnerable, not even for an hour. The SUV rolled slowly toward the private road, its tires hissing on wet asphalt. The iron gates loomed ahead, black and imposing against the lightning-streaked sky. Maxim's heart drummed in his chest as Taras killed the headlights. The darkness swallowed them whole. They parked behind a cluster of pine trees, the towering gates just visible through the sheets of rain. Bohdan jumped out first, the hood of his black jacket pulled tight over his face. He crouched by the gate's control box, his fingers dancing over the panel with surgical precision. Sparks hissed in the rain, and within seconds, the gates groaned open just wide enough for the SUV to slip through. Too easy, Bohdan muttered under his breath as he climbed back in. The words hung in the air like a bad omen. The mansion rose before them like a monolith, its glass and steel exterior gleaming faintly in the stormlight. Maxim scanned the surroundings. No guards, no patrol vehicles, not even the faintest sign of movement inside. Where the hell is everyone? Taras whispered. Sleeping off the storm, Victor grunted, his voice like gravel. But Maxim wasn't so sure. Something about the stillness felt wrong. He shoved the thought aside. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the driveway. The crew moved like shadows, slipping into the darkness, their boots splashing through puddles as they made their way to the side entrance. Bohdan knelt by the keypad, pulled out his tools, and within seconds the door clicked open with a soft metallic sigh. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, carrying the faint scent of polished wood and expensive cologne. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the steady tick of a grandfather clock somewhere deep within the house. Move, Maxim ordered. They glided through the hallways, their flashlights slicing through the dark. The walls were lined with priceless art, oil paintings, rare sculptures, wealth so obscene it made Taras's head spin. But none of that mattered. They were here for one thing, the safe. They reached the study without a sound. Bohdan flicked on his penlight, illuminating the massive abstract painting on the far wall. Behind it, the safe waited like a silent guardian. Maxim's pulse quickened as he pulled a slim black case from his bag. Inside lay the tools that would make or break this job. Clock's ticking, Victor said, his deep voice rumbling through the dark. Maxim nodded, his fingers moving with practiced precision. The painting slid aside, revealing the steel vault embedded in the wall. The keypad glowed faintly, the biometric scanner pulsing like a heartbeat. Maxim keyed in the first sequence, then placed his thumb on the pad. A soft chime sounded, and the locking mechanism disengaged with a satisfying click. For a brief moment, Maxim allowed himself to believe it was all going according to plan. And then the lights flickered, once, twice, and the power came back on. A shrill alarm exploded through the mansion, slicing through the silence like a scream. Red lights strobed across the hallways, bathing the walls in an eerie glow. The crew froze, their faces ghostly in the crimson light. What the hell? Taras started, but his voice was drowned out by the automated announcement booming from hidden speakers. Security breach detected. Law enforcement notified. Armed response en chaste. The clock had started ticking for real this time, and as Maxim's eyes darted toward the hallway, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. Someone was home. Maxim's breath caught in his throat.
For a split second, he thought it was his imagination, a trick of the flashing red lights, but then the shadow moved again, slow and deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. "Someone's here," Maxim hissed, his voice barely audible over the blaring alarm. Boden's grin widened in the crimson strobe. "Guess dinner plans changed," he muttered, his fingers tightening around the grip of his pistol. "Shut up," Maxim snapped, spinning toward the crew. "Taras, kill the alarm. Boden, cover the hallway. Victor, with me we're finishing the safe." Taras scrambled to the security panel mounted by the study door, his hands shaking as he tore open the casing. Wires spilled out like veins, sparking as he worked. System rebooted when the power came back. Full lockdown mode. Then stall it, Maxim barked. Behind them, Boden moved into position, his pistol sweeping the corridor. The strobing lights painted his face in blood-red flashes, and for the first time tonight, his manic grin faltered. Something was wrong. Then they heard it, the sound of slow, heavy footsteps echoing down the hallway. Maxim's stomach turned to ice. Whoever was out there wasn't panicking. They weren't running for cover or calling the cops. They were coming straight for them. Who the hell stays calm during a break-in? Boden whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "Focus," Maxim growled, punching in the final override sequence on the safe. The vault door groaned, inching open with agonizing slowness. Almost there. The footsteps grew louder, steady as a metronome. Then, without warning, the overhead lights blazed to life, flooding the corridor in harsh white glare. The alarms died mid-scream, replaced by a chilling silence that made the hair on Maxim's neck stand up.
Guys.
Taras muttered, his eyes darting around the now eerily quiet hallways. Boden took a step forward, his pistol raised. "Show yourself," he shouted into the silence. His voice echoed like a gunshot, and then they heard it, a low chuckle, deep and cold, rolling down the hallway like distant thunder. Maxim felt his blood run cold. From the shadows emerged a man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black tailored suit that gleamed under the sterile light. His hair was slicked back, and in his right hand he held a matte black pistol fitted with a suppressor. But it wasn't the weapon that froze them. It was the look in his eyes, calm, predatory, deadly. "Andrei Kornienko," Maxim breathed, the name tasting like ash on his tongue. "The millionaire. The ghost they thought was dining in the city. The man who should not have been here. You've made a grave mistake," Kornienko said, his voice smooth and controlled, like a man hosting a private meeting, not standing in the middle of a home invasion. "Do you know what happens to thieves who break into my house?" Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. He smiled, a slow, cold curve of the lips. "They never leave." Before anyone could react, he fired. The shot was soft, almost polite, a dull thump that barely broke the silence. Taras jerked violently, a neat hole blooming in the center of his forehead. His body crumpled to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. Boden roared, firing wildly down the hall, but Kornienko was gone, melting back into the shadows like smoke. "Move! Move!" Victor yanked the safe open and stuffed the black duffel with bundles of cash, thick, neatly stacked bills that felt almost unreal in his trembling hands. "Forget the money," Maxim snapped, but it was too late. Victor wasn't leaving without it. The mansion was no longer a house, it was a trap. The lights flickered again, and suddenly, steel shutters slammed down over the windows with a deafening clang. The exits were sealed. Boden cursed, reloading with trembling hands. "He's playing with us." As if on cue, Kornienko's voice crackled through the mansion's intercom, smooth and amused. "You think you can take what's mine and walk away?" His tone was soft, almost conversational, which made it all the more terrifying. "This is my kingdom, and you gentlemen are rats in a maze." The intercom clicked off and a new sound filled the air, the low whir of machinery. Hidden panels slid open in the walls, revealing black, insect-like drones that hovered silently, their lenses glowing an ominous red. "What the hell is that?" Boden whispered, his voice breaking. "Security system," Maxim said, his throat dry as sand. "Custom built." The drones tilted, their rotors spinning faster. Then, with a high-pitched whine, they unleashed a hail of steel darts that shredded the wooden desk into splinters. "Cover! Now!" Maxim dove behind a marble column as darts screamed past his head. Boden ducked behind the couch, cackling like a madman as he fired at the drones. Victor dragged Taras's lifeless body out of the open and grabbed his weapon, returning fire in controlled bursts. Sparks erupted as bullets ricocheted off polished floors and glass walls. Maxim's mind raced. This wasn't just a break-in gone wrong, it was a slaughterhouse, and they were the meat. He crawled toward the safe, snatched the duffel from Victor, and slung it over his shoulder. "Forget him. Move. We find another exit or we die here." Boden grinned like a demon, his eyes wild. "Finally," he muttered, a real challenge. The words barely left his mouth when a dart pierced his shoulder, spinning him sideways. He laughed through the pain, blood soaking his sleeve. They bolted from the study, sprinting down the hallway as the drones gave chase, their mechanical whine echoing like the cry of steel predators. The intercom crackled again, Kornienko's voice following them like a ghost. "Run as fast as you can," he murmured, "but you won't leave my house alive." The air inside the mansion felt heavy, thick with the metallic scent of blood and gunpowder. Maxim could feel the duffel bag dragging on his shoulder like an anchor, the weight of greed pulling them deeper into hell. Every corridor looked the same, white marble floors, polished walls reflecting their frantic movements. The only difference now was the darkness. Kornienko had killed the main lights again, leaving them in a cold twilight, lit only by strips of emergency LEDs running along the baseboards. Boden stumbled beside him, his shoulders slick with blood, his breath ragged. He clutched his pistol like a lifeline, grinning through the pain. "This guy's fun," he wheezed. "Better than any bank. Shut up and keep moving." Maxim snapped, his voice echoing too loud. He didn't want to hear Bogdan's madness right now, not when the walls themselves felt alive watching. Behind them, Victor cursed under his breath, dragging his feet. He hadn't spoken much since Taras died. His eyes were wide, hollow. In his other hand he carried Taras's pistol, his knuckles white on the grip. They turned a corner, and froze. The hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel, lined with tall, sleek panels of black glass. In the dim light, their reflections stared back at them, distorted, monstrous. "Where the hell are we?" Victor muttered, his voice low. "The south wing," Maxim guessed. "Keep moving. There's got to be another exit." They took 3 steps before the floor clicked beneath them. Click. It was soft, almost delicate, but it echoed like a gunshot in their ears. "Don't move," Maxim hissed, his pulse hammering. Bogdan chuckled under his breath. "Pressure plates. Cute." He lifted his foot slowly, testing the ground. Takes more than a rich psycho to. The hallway exploded into chaos. Panels in the walls slid open with a hiss, and steel arms shot out like striking snakes. Bogdan barely had time to scream before a serrated blade swung down, grazing his arm and slicing a deep gash across his ribs. Blood sprayed, painting the glass in a grotesque smear. "Run!" Maxim bellowed. They sprinted, the trap corridor awakening like a mechanical beast. Blades slashed from the walls, crushing panels shot from the ceiling, and the floor erupted with steel spikes. The sound was deafening, metal shrieking, gears grinding, Bogdan's manic laughter echoing through it all. Victor tripped, a spike tearing his boot, and Maxim yanked him up by the collar just as another blade swung past, close enough to shear off a lock of his hair. They crashed through the end of the corridor, slamming into a reinforced door. "Open it!" Victor roared, pounding on the handle. Maxim twisted the knob. It didn't budge. Locked. Behind them, Bogdan staggered through the chaos, blood dripping from his wounds. He still wore that insane grin, his teeth red. "He's good," he panted, leaning against the wall. "Really good." The traps fell silent. The only sound now was their ragged breathing, and a soft click. They turned. A security camera, barely the size of a coin, pivoted on the wall, its lens glowing red. "Smile," Bogdan rasped, raising his middle finger at the camera. The intercom crackled. Kornienko's voice slid through like a serpent. "You're predictable. You think you can outrun my house? You're still in the first layer." Before anyone could respond, the ceiling above them split open, and 2 massive steel nets dropped, snaring Bogdan and Victor like animals. They fought, thrashing wildly, but the wires tightened with every movement, cutting into their flesh. "No!" Maxim lunged, but a hidden door slammed shut between them, a wall dropping like a guillotine. The sound of Bogdan's laughter and Victor's screams faded behind it, muffled and distant. Maxim staggered back, his fists pounding against the cold steel. "Damn it!" The intercom clicked again, Kornienko's voice calm, almost fatherly. "Don't worry. They won't die quickly." Maxim froze, his breath shaking. He turned slowly. The duffel bag felt heavier than ever, pressing him down like a curse. He was alone now, or so he thought. From the far end of the corridor, a soft glow appeared, flickering light, warm and golden. A fireplace. In this labyrinth of death, curiosity wrestled with survival. He should run. He should find another way out. But something in that light pulled at him, like a moth to a flame. He tightened his grip on the duffel and walked toward it, every step echoing like a countdown. When he reached the open doorway, he froze. The room was beautiful, a grand library, its walls lined with shelves of leather-bound books. A fire crackled in a marble hearth, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. In the center sat a leather armchair, and in that chair, calmly swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass, was Andrei Kornienko. He looked up and smiled, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "Sit, Maxim," he said softly, as if inviting an old friend to dinner. "We need to talk." Maxim stood at the threshold, his boots sinking slightly into the thick Persian rug. The warmth of the fire brushed against his sweat-soaked skin, an almost tender embrace after the icy corridors of death. For a fleeting second, he felt like he had stepped out of hell and into heaven. But the devil was sitting in the armchair. Andrei Kornienko was not what Maxim expected. He had imagined an aging tycoon with sagging skin and tired eyes, clinging to wealth as if it were oxygen. Instead, Kornienko looked sharp. His silver hair was slicked back immaculately, his tailored black suit fitting like a second skin. His eyes were the most unsettling pale gray, unblinking calm in a way that only men who controlled life and death could be. "Sit," Kornienko repeated, his voice smooth like old cognac. Maxim didn't move. His heart thudded like a war drum in his chest, his finger twitching near the trigger. He didn't trust chairs anymore, not after what happened to Taras, to Bogdan, to Victor. Kornienko smiled, as if reading his thoughts. "If I wanted you dead, Maxim, you'd already be hanging with your friends in the basement. I like you. You're disciplined, smarter than the rest." He took a slow sip from his glass, the firelight dancing in the amber liquid. "Sit." Against his better judgment, Maxim obeyed. The leather was warm, almost too warm, as if someone else had been sitting there moments ago. He kept the duffel bag on his lap like a shield. Kornienko studied him for a moment, then tilted his head. "Tell me something. Do you know what's in that bag?" Maxim frowned. "Cash." The old man's smile widened into something almost predatory. "That's what you think." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Do you know why there's no money in my safe? Why you didn't find a single dollar?" Maxim's blood ran cold. "You broke into my home, Maxim," Kornienko continued, his tone casual, conversational, like a professor lecturing a student. But not because you wanted money. You were sent here by someone who told you there would be riches beyond your dreams. Who was it? Who sold you this fairy tale? Maxim stayed silent, his jaw clenched tight. Kornienko chuckled softly. Loyalty, admirable, but misplaced. He set his glass down and reached for a small remote on the table beside him. A click, and the large plasma screen on the far wall lit up. The image made Maxim's stomach twist. Bohdan, hanging upside down like a carcass in a slaughterhouse, his body swaying gently. His eyes were open, staring blankly into nothing. Blood dripped in steady beats onto the tiled floor. Next image, Victor, still alive strapped to a steel chair, his mouth gagged, eyes wide with terror. The camera zoomed in on his face as a mechanical arm with a spinning blade inched closer. Stop it, Maxim growled, his fists clenching, but Kornienko ignored him, clicking to the next image. A woman, young, beautiful, her eyes the same green as Maxim's. She was tied to a chair, duct tape across her mouth, tears streaking her cheeks. Maxim froze, his throat closed up. How do you? She's your sister, isn't she? Kornienko's voice was almost gentle now, like a surgeon preparing to cut. Pretty girl, lives alone in Kiev, teaches piano. I sent her a bouquet last week. White roses. She smiled when she opened the door. Maxim's body went rigid, his vision tunneling. The room shrank until it was just him, Kornienko, and the screen with his sister's terrified face. What do you want? Maxim rasped, his voice barely a whisper. Kornienko's smile returned, cold and sharp. A simple trade. You give me what's in that bag, and I let her live. Maxim looked down at the duffel, his hands trembling. He slowly unzipped it, and froze. Inside were no stacks of cash, no glittering jewelry, only a sleek metal case, the kind used for transporting classified materials. On its surface was a biometric lock, and a small insignia Maxim didn't recognize, but it looked military. What is this? Something far more valuable than money, Kornienko said softly. Those files could bring down governments, and someone somewhere wanted me dead so they could have them. That's why they sent you. Maxim's mind reeled. The heist was a lie. They were pawns in a game so big it made his stomach turn. I'll let you live, Maxim, Kornienko continued, his voice silk over steel. But the bag stays, and you work for me now. Maxim's grip tightened on the bag, until his knuckles whitened. His heart pounded like a drum of war. He could give it up, save his sister, or fight and die here, leaving her to whatever horrors Kornienko planned. He stared into those pale gray eyes, and saw no mercy. Only power, only control. I need an answer, Kornienko said softly. Maxim took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the decision crush him. The fire crackled, the clock ticked, and somewhere far away, a storm raged against the windows like a warning. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but his soul felt like it was breaking. You're going to regret this, Andrei. Kornienko's smile widened. Oh, I already do. Before Maxim could react, the chair beneath him lurched forward, mechanical clamps snapping shut around his arms and legs. The duffel bag was ripped from his lap by a robotic arm and whisked away into a wall compartment. Kornienko stood, finishing his drink in one graceful motion. You see, Maxim, in my house there are no choices, only illusions. The last thing Maxim saw before the needle pierced his neck was Kornienko's calm, smiling face framed by the golden glow of the fire. Then everything went black. The world returned in fragments, sound first, muffled and distant, like waves breaking on a shore. Then light, a pale glow filtering through half-lidded eyes. Maxim blinked against the blur, his head pounding, his limbs heavy and unresponsive. He was in a different room now. No firelight, no warmth, just cold steel and humming machines. The smell of antiseptic and blood clawed at his nostrils. His arms were strapped to a metal chair, IV lines snaking into his veins. Something in his blood burned like liquid fire. You're awake, a voice said, smooth as silk, dripping with satisfaction. Maxim lifted his head, fighting the weight of sedation. Kornienko stood a few feet away, flanked by two men in black tactical gear, their faces masked, their rifles slung low but ready. Behind him, a reinforced glass wall revealed something out of a nightmare, a laboratory. Inside, a man writhed on a table, tubes and wires pumping into his body as machines beeped in an eerie rhythm. You've been asleep for, an hour, Kornienko said pleasantly, strolling toward him with a small metal case in his hand, the same case from the bag. Long enough for me to verify everything inside this beauty. Do you know what's in here, Maxim? Maxim stayed silent, his jaw clenched, though every nerve screamed for answers. These are not files, Kornienko said, his pale gray eyes gleaming. Not in the sense you understand. They're algorithms, classified AI defense protocols stolen from a NATO black project. The kind of thing governments would kill to retrieve. The kind of thing that makes men like me untouchable. He crouched down, his voice dropping to a whisper. And you almost delivered it to them. Them, Maxim croaked, his throat raw. Kornienko smiled. The people who sent you. Did you really think a man like Victor stumbled upon a perfect heist by accident? No. He was fed that plan by operatives, mercenaries in suits, waving fat promises of money. They wanted my prize, Maxim, and they used you to get it. The truth slammed into Maxim like a freight train. His team had never stood a chance. They were pawns from the start. Kornienko straightened, his smile sharpening. I told you I could let you live, and I will, on one condition. He turned to the guards. Bring her. The door hissed open. Two more men entered, dragging a figure between them. Maxim's heart stopped. His sister, alive but barely, duct tape